What's up, everybody? David Yakir here for iHeartRadio's Yak About, a boomer's GPS guide to life. So if you're familiar with the years 46 to 64, then this is the place you want to be. So put your headphones on, go for a run, and listen as we yak about. Okay, David here for Yak About, helping you be better, healthier, and more informed than any generation that came before. You know, I've been waiting to say this for a long time, but we are broadcasting today poolside from the Bent Pine Golf Club in the heart of the Treasure Coast. And today we've got a lot of yakking to do. We'll yak about health, we'll yak about tech, and we'll yak about some great places to go and relax. But first, remember that this show is sponsored in part by New Vision Eye Center. So go see Dr. Minotti, Reinauer, Tate, O'Brien, and the rest of that great team, because Sally, Wayne, and I wouldn't trust our eyes to anyone else, and I can guarantee that they will take good care of you. And by Chef Bill, the personal chef and catering company. His clients on the Barrier Island have been raving about him and how he has made the food experience as unique and individual as the clients themselves. Some call him the caregiving chef. He is available as a personal chef and for catering your events as small as a dinner party and large parties too. So if you've ever thought of having a personal chef, call Chef Bill. And for more information, call the Inspired Foods Chef line at 772-217-5462. That's 772-217-5462. And by the way, if you're interested in sponsoring Yak About and our quest to be a great resource to the 46-64 generation, then call the David Yakir Group at 212-244-6224. That's 212-244-6224, or write to info@yakirgroup.com. You know, before I begin, we're going to talk a little bit about a new cancer study that really should be very interesting to most of you. But I wanted to share something that I recently found out and had a bit of experience with. Some of you know that I'm often talking about how we spend too much for our products and services, and that if you spend a little time researching, you can probably save 20 to 30% off of retail price. And that only takes really searching around the internet for discounts and that type of thing. But I had an interesting conversation. Apparently, most people, as part of their drug plans, as part of their health insurance plans, have a drug plan, and that those drug plans seem to be divided into tiers. So you have a tier 1 drug, a tier 2 drug, or a tier 3 drug, and your copay is based on which tier those drugs fall into. And I had heard about the fact that you can actually call the health insurance company and talk to them about the tier that your drugs fall into. So you can actually have a tier 3 drug where your copay could be $50, $75, $100, whatever it is for your tier 3, and call them and say, look, this is a drug. It's one of a kind. I'm not sure the explanations you need, but you can have the conversation about trying to move that tier 3 drug into, let's say, a tier 2. And so I actually called my insurance company after I found this out, and I talked to them, and sure enough, they were able to move a tier 3 drug into a tier 2 category, and that actually went and saved about $150 over a 90-day supply. So I would recommend calling your insurance company or whoever you get your drug plans from and see if that'll work for you. All right, I thought I'd share that with you. And next, I want to talk about an interesting study that just came out about cancer. Okay, I want to bring you a new study that I found, and it's a study that says getting cancer is mostly bad luck. So we all know that without a cure in sight, cancer has become one of the biggest of society's concerns. And of course, the fear of getting it is enough for many people to change their lifestyles in dramatic and meaningful ways. And even though it's increasingly possible to beat the disease, it remains one of the biggest universal health worries. So as it turns out, all that anxiety may be for nothing, as there is new research that suggests that getting cancer is more about bad luck than lifestyle factors, though it's still possible to lessen your overall chances. Now, science they've historically kept its distance when it comes to estimating the number of cancers that are caused by any particular factor and what cases of the disease would have happened regardless of outside influence. So Johns Hopkins University scientists published a new study in the journal Science that does exactly what researchers have avoided doing for ages, and the figures may come as a bit of surprise. The team sought to pinpoint the cause of the genetic mutations that cause cancer and determine what influenced the outcome. Now, shockingly, the data suggests that a full 66% of the mutations that eventually result in cancer are completely random errors in the DNA with no direct cause. Environmental factors like smoking, pollution, and all the other things we think of as being triggers for the disease account for about 29% of cancers. The last 5% are thought to be inherited. The scientists explain that DNA mutations normally don't occur in genes with cancer-causing ability and therefore don't have any negative consequences. When mutations randomly occur in certain genes, however, cancer may result. And most of the time, it's simply bad luck. Okay, so I've got another study for you, and this one I think will be fun, or at least it should be fun, and it asks the question, is walking, stretching, or dance, which may be the best for the brain? So we owe this one to Gretchen Reynolds. She's from the New York Times. We thank her for this. But she asked the question, could learning to dance the minuet or fandango help to protect our brains from aging? So this new study compared the neurological effects of country dancing with those of walking and other activities, and it suggests that there may be something unique about learning to social dance. The demands it places on the mind and body could make it unusually potent at slowing some of the changes inside our skulls that seem otherwise inevitable with aging. So neuroscientists and those in middle age or beyond know that brains alter and slow as we grow older. The processing speed, which is a measure of how rapidly our brains can absorb, assess, and respond to new information, seems to be particularly hard hit. Now, most people who are older than about 40 perform worse on tests of processing speed than those who are younger, with the effects accelerating as the decades pass. Scientists suspect that this decline is due in large part to, wait for this, a concomitant fraying of our brain's white matter. That's a lot to say, which is essentially its wiring. So white matter consists of specialized cells and their offshoots that pass messages between neurons and from one part of the brain to the other. In young brains, these messages whip from neuron to neuron with boggling speed, but in older people, brain scans show that white matter can be skimpier and less efficient. Messages stutter and slow. So, for the new study, which was published this month in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience, researchers from the University of Illinois in Urbana and other schools decided to look at the effects of several different types of exercise on the wiring and the function of older people's brains. They began by recruiting 174 healthy people in their 60s and 70s with no sign of cognitive impairment. Most were sedentary, although some occasionally exercise. Then they invited the men and women to a university lab for tests of their aerobic fitness and mental capacities, including processing speed and a brain scan with a sophisticated MRI machine. And finally, the researchers randomly divided the volunteers into several groups. One began a supervised program of brisk walking for an hour 3 times a week. Another started a regimen of supervised gentle stretching and balance training 3 times a week. The last group was assigned to learn to dance. These men and women showed up for the studio 3 times a week for an hour and practiced increasingly intricate country dance choreography, with the group shaping itself into fluid lines and squares, and each person moving from partner to partner. After 6 months, the volunteers returned to the lab to repeat the tests, and the brain scans from the study start. The differences now proved to be both promising and worrisome at the same time. By and large, everyone's brain showed some signs of what scientists termed degeneration of the white matter. The changes were subtle, involving slight thinning of the size and number of connections between the neurons. But the effects were surprisingly widespread throughout people's brains, given that only 6 months had elapsed since the first scans. The study's lead author and professor of human development and neuroscience at Colorado State University in Fort Collins found the degeneration was especially noticeable in the oldest volunteers and those who had been the most sedentary before joining the study. However, one group showed an actual improvement in the health of some of the white matter in their brains compared to 6 months before. The dancers now had denser white matter in their fornix, a part of the brain involved with processing speed and memory. It seems likely that the cognitive demands of the dancing, which required people to learn and master new choreography throughout the 6 months of the study, affected the biochemistry of the brain tissue in the fornix. Right? The doctor said that it prompted increases in the thickness and quantity of the wiring there. And interestingly, none of the changes in the volunteers' white matter were obviously reflected in their cognitive performance. Almost everyone performed better now on thinking tests than at the study's start, including tests of the processing speed, even if their white matter was skimpier. These results indicated that there could be a time lag between when the brain changes structurally and when we start having trouble thinking and remembering. But more encouraging, she said, they also suggest that engaging in any activities involving moving and socializing, as each of these groups' programs did, might perk up mental abilities in the aging brains. And the message is that we should try not to be sedentary. The people who came into our study already exercising showed the least decline in white matter health, and those who took up dancing showed white matter gains. Of course, this study was relatively short-term. Dr. Brzezinska hopes in the future to study the brains of people engaging in different types of exercise over the course of several years. But for now, she says, the data provides another rationale for moving and perhaps also learning to contra-dance and sashay. All right. I think I'll get one of those standing desks now when I record this show. All right, we'll take a break right now. We'll let our sponsors and advertisers have their say because they're the ones that make it all possible. I'm David Yak here, and you're listening to Yak About. Okay, those are new beats we created specifically for this section of Yak About. So, a few weeks ago, I talked to you about how Congress and the President were going after your internet privacy. Well, it's official. Both the Senate and the House voted to overturn privacy rules created by the FCC, and your ISP will now be free to sell your internet browsing history and location data to advertisers. But if you want to opt out, there's still one way you can do so, and that's using something called a VPN, which stands for Virtual Private Network. A VPN does two things. First, it encrypts all of your internet traffic. That means that anyone who intercepts it won't be able to tell which sites you are accessing or what you are doing there, and that includes your ISP. Second, it disguises your location by making it appear that your traffic originates somewhere else. This is particularly useful if you want to do something like access Netflix content, which is only available in one particular country. So even though Netflix clamped down on VPNs, there are still a few that work for that, though you need to keep hopping servers to stay one step ahead. But nevertheless, you need to do your homework when choosing a VPN. Services vary in both speed and the number of countries in which they have servers. More importantly, while your ISP won't be able to log your internet traffic, an unscrupulous VPN service could. You could then still find your data being sold just by someone else. So always choose a reputable, well-researched VPN service which specifies that it does not collect logs, like Nord, N-O-R-D VPN, the one I use myself. NordVPN never logs where you go on the internet. If anyone asks, the best they can do is shrug their shoulders. And most VPN services can be used by both Mac and iOS devices, and I also recommend using them when using a public Wi-Fi hotspot to guard against man-in-the-middle attacks. So while this vote is disappointing, if not surprising, there is one glimmer of light. It could provide some amusement to the public and embarrassment to the politicians who voted for the loss of privacy. CNET spotted that Cards Against Humanity creator Max Temkin has vowed to buy the browsing history of every congressman and publish it. So there. All right, so let's do a little Yak About lifestyle here. So if you didn't catch this by Susie Strutner over at The Huff, she sort of researched and found the most relaxing places in the United States itself to get away from it all. This way you can plan a trip that provides true relaxation. And these are just the places to do it. Whether your idea of relaxation is a quiet mountain hike, a beachside nap, or a cooking class, this lineup has got you covered, and I'll do as many as I can within the time limits that we have. But these are really great. So let's start with number 1, Olympic National Park, Washington. This is great. An acoustic ecologist determined that this is the quietest spot in the lower 48 states. It's Olympic National Park, Ho Rain Forest. You can hike or camp inside the park, letting its lush forest, rugged beaches, and lack of human-prompted noise soothe your soul. Number 2, the Great Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. Now, if you like fly fishing or horseback riding, right, this is the place to go. It even has Blackberry Farm, which is a luxury resort in the foothills, and has a collection of what people saying are the most charming cottages and one of the best destination cooking classes in the country. Number 3, Sedona, Arizona. This is where you find the country's greatest spas. They're always ranked among the best, and the New York Times named this desert getaway one of the top places to visit this year, thanks in part to its warm weather and apparently great new restaurants. The next is Cayo Costa, Florida. Now, this is a forested, primitive island on the lower Gulf Coast and is accessible only by ferry, making it a tranquil escape from Florida's buzzier beaches. So they say it has miles of gorgeous coastline, and it gets great rave reviews from visitors who vouch for the lack of crowds. And for those of you who like up north, Killington, Vermont. New Life Hiking Spa comes highly recommended as one of the nation's best spas, offering daily treks through Vermont's Green Mountains. In wintertime, head to Killington Ski Resort for a snow-dusted getaway. I love the way she phrased that. I think I'd like to go back up north. All right, Boulder, Colorado. This is considered one of America's least stressed cities. The Pearl Street Mall and a wide range of restaurants provide plenty of low-key shopping and dining opportunities. And hit the Flatirons. Those are majestic sandstone formations in the distance if you're a fan of climbing, hiking, or picnics. Colorado, Boulder, Colorado. And next on our list, number 7, Gates of the Arctic National Park in Alaska. Now, Gates of the Arctic is one of America's least visited national parks, and ideal if you're going off the grid in your relaxation goal. No trails or visitor services. The massive slice of Alaskan backcountry leaves travelers to camp, canoe, and explore in total peace, and I understand there's almost nobody there, hardly ever. Anyway, number 8, this is particularly a favorite of mine from the days when I went to graduate school in Santa Barbara, UCSB, and we used to go up to Carmel by the Sea, California. It's an artsy hideout on the Monterey Peninsula. It's known for Big Sur, and it has beautiful small-town shops and galleries, right? And then it has beautiful trails down to the beach, little inns and lodges, let you fall asleep to the sound of waves. Definitely one of my favorite places in the country. And for another city one, number 9 is Seattle, Washington. If settling in with a good book sounds like relaxation to you, then you know you can tour Seattle's neighborhood coffee shops to find a cozy nook. Seattle is also one of America's fittest cities with plenty of scenic running trails for an active break. And I always liked Seattle. It was a great getaway. We had Microsoft for a very long time as a client at the David Yak Group. So, we spent a lot of time there. It's a great city. And let me see if I say this right, because my friends, Holly and Tom, would kill me if I get this wrong. Kauai, Hawaii. Right? If the view from the famous Tunnels Beach isn't dazzling enough, just ask locals for directions to one of the secret beaches along Kauai's shore. The island is more rural and relaxed than, say, Maui, with one of the world's best surf towns for those who find Zen on the board. All right, those are 10. I'll post the other 5 or 6 that I have for you on the yakhirgroup.com website. So until next week, we'll see you soon. It's David Yak here, and you're listening to Yak About.